I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain as I fear I will not be alive much longer. A shadow grows on my mind, not from outside, but from something I saw and can no longer keep buried. You see, I was once an officer during the Great War. Our ship, a merchant vessel, was captured by the enemy. I was cast adrift in a lifeboat, alone on an endless brooding ocean under a sky of glaring sun and blankness. I drifted, drank rainwater when I could, but mostly just floated, numb, until a strange shift began. The sea around me turned black and thick like oil, and the air became stifling. I thought I was hallucinating. Then came the quake. It was not loud but felt, deep in the bones. The water churned violently as if something vast was rising beneath me. Then silence again, heavier than before. By the next morning, the boat had grounded. The sea was gone. I awoke to find myself marooned on a slimy expanse of black, rotting muck, miles in every direction. No waves, no sound but the drip of brine from my shattered craft. The sun blazed down but gave no warmth, and the whole place smelled of decay. Fish and strange marine creatures lay strewn across the wet floor, their bodies bloated, eyeless, and grotesque. It was as if the ocean had vomited up its secrets. I wandered. Days blurred. There was no sign of life, no rescue, just miles of sticky seabed that dried into a crusted plain as I walked, cracked and veined with salt. At night, I tried to sleep, but dreamed of black shapes swimming beneath invisible waters. Their movements stirred the air with a rhythm I couldn't understand, yet somehow remembered. Then I saw it. A hill, or something like one, rising far in the distance. It glistened oddly, as though wet, and was shaped unnaturally, almost too symmetrical to be natural. I was drawn to it, compelled by something beyond my will. The climb was difficult, slippery, the crust broke underfoot. But I reached the summit, and then I saw it. A chasm below, a yawning cleft in the earth, and at its center, a monolith, towering black and carved with symbols that bent my mind to look upon. Not symbols, really. They were more like impressions, suggesting images that shifted when you weren't watching, like water that took on meaning. Figures swam across the stone in bas relief. Men, yes, but not men. Scaled, finned, long-fingered creatures with bulbous eyes. They held ceremonies, worshipped some vast being that dwarfed them all. The being stood atop the altar, amphibian in form, with webbed claws and curling tendrils for a face. I did not know its name, but its essence etched itself into me. I knew it was ancient. I knew it was awake. I couldn't move. Something in the stone had paralyzed me, not in body, but in thought. And then the sea began to return. From the far edges of the horizon, I saw it pouring back in, silent and unhurried. The tide rose around the base of the monolith. I wanted to flee, but couldn't. I just watched. Then it emerged. The sea parted with a soundless breath, and a colossal shape rose from the depths. Not a wave, not a fish, not anything human minds are made to comprehend. Its form was slippery and half-seen, like shadow through thick glass. The head breached first, a mass of flesh and bone, crowned with fins, eyes deep-set and glowing, shoulders wider than ships, arms that reached with a terrible grace toward the altar. It worshipped. That's what I saw. It bowed before the monolith, placing its massive hands on the stone with a reverence I cannot describe. The way its fingers curled into the etchings, how its mouth moved without sound, made me realize it was not a god, it was a supplicant. The real god was deeper still. The vision shattered something in me. I must have screamed. I remember falling, tumbling backward off the hill into the rising waters. Cold took me. Pressure. And then, I woke in a hospital. They told me a ship had found me adrift, unconscious. No one believed the seabed story. They said I had suffered sunstroke, dehydration, delusion. The war had taken its toll, they said. But I know better. I can still see the thing's eyes. I can feel the monolith when I close my own. It visits me in dreams, standing taller now, the water deeper, the chants louder. Something is rising, and I cannot bear to wait. The doctors said my mind was still recovering, that such hallucinations were expected after prolonged isolation. They gave me sedatives and confined me to a dim room with barred windows. I stopped speaking about the monolith, the creature, the tide that had swallowed the world beneath me. They wanted a trauma narrative, and I gave them one. Pirates, dehydration, madness. Easier to swallow than the truth. But it didn't stop the dreams. Each night, as soon as I shut my eyes, I felt myself sinking. The air turned thick and briny. The walls of my room melted away into algae-slicked stone. I walked through tunnels, spiraling downward deeper than any trench, deeper than imagination. I heard the chants before I saw them, low, wet syllables bubbling upward from black throats. The air throbbed with them. Sometimes I stood again before the monolith. Sometimes I watched from below as something stirred beneath a floor of translucent bone. Always, though, I felt a vastness, an intelligence pressing against the edges of my mind, indifferent and awake. One evening I awoke screaming. A nurse ran in. I must have shouted something, perhaps a word I hadn't known I knew. Her face changed as if she'd heard something she wasn't supposed to. She didn't speak of it again, but after that I noticed the doctors kept their distance. Whispers followed me in the halls. One orderly crossed himself every time he passed my door. They discharged me soon after, declared fit, sane, and ready to return to the world. But the world had shifted. Cities felt brittle, skies too shallow. I walked through crowded streets, but always I heard the tide, distant, low, calling. I moved into a cheap apartment on the edge of the city, near the harbor. The salt air was strangely comforting. From my window, I watched the waves roll in and out like breath. Some nights I sat for hours, listening, waiting. I began researching, obsessively. Old sea myths, ancient maps, forbidden texts whispered about in dim corners of libraries. I found echoes. The Pacific held secrets, so did the Sargasso. Tribes spoke of gods beneath the waves, older than the moon. Men had gone missing near strange islands, reefs that appeared and vanished, seafloors that rose like living things. One name kept surfacing, Dagon. The Phoenicians worshipped him as a sea deity, half man, half fish. But those were just masks. Beneath each tale lay a deeper current, one that spoke of ancient, sleeping forces with scales and claws and unnameable hungers. I saw it in petroglyphs, in carvings no one had translated. I saw it in the eyes of other researchers who stopped replying to my letters. I came across one report, an old naval document from the war, classified and buried. A patrol submarine had gone missing in the same region where I'd been found. Before it vanished, it had reported strange underwater terrain, rising formations, sonar anomalies. The log ended with a single phrase, "The altar is not alone." I knew I had to go back. I sold what little I had, booked passage on a freighter under false credentials. I told them I was a naturalist studying migratory fish. No one asked questions. We headed west, past the usual routes, past the markers on conventional charts. Then came the storm. It wasn't on any forecast. The sky blackened without warning. The sea rose in angry, swollen heaps. Lightning clawed the air. The crew shouted. The vessel groaned. For a moment, I thought the whole world had tilted on its axis. A wall of water slammed across the deck. I was thrown over the railing into the churning black. Darkness swallowed everything. When I opened my eyes again, the sky had cleared. I floated on a piece of driftwood, alone, adrift. Again. But this time I recognized the sea. It was thick, slow, gleaming like tar. The same as before, my limbs moved on their own. I paddled forward, not knowing where I went, but knowing I must go. Soon the waters thinned, the tide pulled back. The seabed rose up to greet me. I had returned. The black muck stretched for miles, the rot, the silence, the sullen weight in the air, all the same. But this time, there was no disorientation. My feet found the path. My mind already knew the direction. I walked for hours or years until the altar appeared. The monolith was larger now, or perhaps I was smaller. Its surface gleamed wetly in the dim light. The carvings had multiplied. New shapes danced across its face, grotesque, graceful, unknowable. The same amphibia forms, the same silent congregation. I stood there, breath shallow. My heart didn't race. I felt no fear, only inevitability. A low rumble stirred beneath my feet. The sea in the distance began to tremble. Something ancient was waking. The sea trembled, but it wasn't rage. It was the breath of something returning. I stood before the monolith, watching the water rise in slow, vast spirals around it. A greenish phosphorescence stirred below the surface, flickering like stars beneath the waves. The sky was a muted slate, heavy and low, as though trying to press down what had already been called forth. Shapes began to emerge, not all at once, but gradually, slipping into view from the impossible angles of the ocean. Their outlines didn't make sense. Slick limbs, glistening backs, mouths where mouths shouldn't be, and eyes, so many eyes, large and lidless, watching me with something more than awareness. They didn't blink, they didn't breathe, but they watched. Patient, eternal. They gathered at the base of the monolith, silently. The gathering wasn't like a ritual in any human sense. It was organic, fluid, like coral slowly blooming from stone. One of them rose from the mass, taller, broader, crowned in scales that shimmered with language. I didn't know what it was, but I understood it was older than everything I had ever known. It looked at me, not through me, not past me, but directly into me. A deep, humming sound pulsed through the ground, into my chest. I wasn't afraid. My knees didn't shake. I felt recognized, measured, claimed. The monolith pulsed. Beneath the waves, something stirred, massive and slow. I saw its silhouette rolling beneath the sea like a mountain breaking its chains. Its surface broke the water for just a moment, smooth, glossy, covered in symbols that made my head hurt when I tried to follow them. One enormous eye blinked open beneath the waves as large as the sky, and it saw me. Everything fell away. There was no water, no air, no sky, just presence. I was no longer on the ocean floor. I was inside something. Its thought, its memory, its hunger. Time collapsed. I saw ancient cities pulsing with strange life. I saw stars being born and consumed. I saw tides where no planets swam. I saw myself aging, dying, beginning again, trapped in a spiral of return. I understood then, the monolith wasn't a shrine. It was a door, not a metaphorical one, but a literal hinge between states of being, between matter and mind, between what we are and what watches us, and I had opened it. My body remained standing, barefoot on that glistening black plain. But my mind traveled. It unfurled like smoke, like ink in water. I was drifting upward and downward at once. I was in the trench, I was above the clouds, I was in the shape behind the stars. And the voice, if it could be called that, whispered not in sound, but in a deep, dreamless knowing. You saw me once and lived, but now you will not forget. When I awoke again, I was back on land. A hospital, I think. Somewhere inland. No memory of how I arrived. My clothes were soaked with salt and seaweed. My skin was cold. They asked questions. I gave no answers. What could I say? I do not sleep anymore. Not in the way others do. My body rests, but my mind drifts. Every night I return to the depths. I stand before the altar. I watch them gather. I hear the hum behind all things. I feel the gaze of the thing that waits, still coiled in the deep folds of the sea. People around me sense something. They avoid my eyes. I don't blame them. There's something behind my gaze now. A depth, a pressure, a faint scent of brine. I speak less. I dream more. I know what's coming. Not in years. Not in centuries, but in the deep, inevitable crawl of tides, the pressure of something turning in its sleep. The moment when that which watches will finally rise, not in rage, not in malice, but in indifference. We are algae on its tongue. I leave this record not as a warning, but as an anchor. For myself, for the me that once believed in continence and sanity and sunlight, for the one who thought nightmares ended when the eyes opened. But the sea does not forget. And the altar is never alone.